Welcome to a football show Thursday edition. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Pay for good journalism. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Nick, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm here. I'm happy. How are you?
I'm well. We're gonna do college football on the show. We haven't done that in a long time, but I know you're very passionate about this, and I am as well. Following spring meetings, we have a discussion about what the proper format of our playoff should be. They are currently discussing this, so I thought, you know what? Let's take a little break from individual drills, and we'll talk a little college football, a little SEC here. The back half of the show is going to kind of lay out the three format models that are being discussed. There is a couple of other ones that we'll briefly touch on, and then I want to get from you, Nick, which one you like the best, and which one do you think is best for the sport? Those could be the same. They could be different, so we'll lay that out for you. For me, it's different. For me, there's one that I think is my favorite, and then I think there's one that's better for the sport, and we'll get to that. All right. Before we do, however, we're going to start with this is going to be very internet-y of me, but I have one thing landed on me while watching Cam practice. We got our second week of Titans practice and OTAs this week. We got to see everything on Tuesday. Not a lot happened, but it was a fairly lackadaisical practice to begin. It got a little bit more interesting as we got to team drills, but I had a thing kind of has been matriculating, and I think you probably have this too, where you start to feel a thing and you start to think a thing, and then you see more than one practice, and all of a sudden it starts to become more than just a thing. It becomes a little theory or a thesis, and all of a sudden I need to talk about it with you and people like you to understand, am I crazy about this? It involves a receiver, and it involves the quarterback. It involves a part of the scheme that I think could be successful, and we'll end with what I feel is sort of like a gut instinct about something that could be very, very positive for this organization coming in the fall. So I want to run it all by you, see what you think. There's also a position battle in camp that I think is going to take over all of our conversation. And you can probably guess what I'm talking about, but I think it's basically like 8 guys for one spot, and we'll get to that coming up.
Did I write about it today? Because if so, I have a game for you.
Dude, this is why I like working with you and hate working with you all at the same time, is if we came to this, I promise you I did not read your story yet, which is both insulting and a compliment at the same time.
No, it's good. Just to spoil it, are we talking about linebackers?
No,
we're not.
Good.
Okay,
good.
Okay,
that's great. That means we're going to have 2 really awesome discussions about debate or about battles coming up in camp. So all that coming up today on the show. However, Sinkers Beverages, they're going to throw a big party. Okay. There's going to be a big party. It's coming soon. It's coming this summer. It's to celebrate their 40th birthday. I'm not trying to give anything away here, but you're going to have access if you are a part of a football show. If you listen to the Gold Standard as well, obviously, if you listen to Hot Read, Sinker's a big part of all of that. Big part of Music City Audible as well. Sinker's big, locally owned and operated here, promoting and supporting the Titans and the Preds. We're gonna have a big party coming up this summer, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you use them for all of your party needs coming up this weekend. Make sure you use Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages, have the booze delivered directly to your house, because they'll do the driving, because you shouldn't if you're drinking. But they also have a bunch of other options, non-alcoholic, THC as well, all kinds of good stuff there at Sinkers Beverages. Great selection. Join the in-crowd as well. We'll talk about Shotgun Willie's Barbecue coming up in just a second. However, Ed says, nice haircut, Nick. So if you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, notifications turned on. Nick does look about 8 pounds lighter.
I wish, but yeah, no, I got a haircut yesterday, and my hair's shorter. I have not much to say. I go in and I say, I don't know how to describe haircuts, make it look good. And this time it worked. I say this lovingly, and as someone who struggles in this department in certain areas of my body, which is you're a very hairy person. Correct.
And I am curious. Like, does anyone ever been like, hey, I think you should sell that? Because can't you make a ton of money on like long hair these days on the black hair market?
Perhaps. I've never priced it. I've never gone to the market and been like, weigh my hair.
I just think you should collect it, grow it really long, collect it, and sell it. I'm saying.
Okay. Next time that'll be our next big sponsorship drive, selling Suss's hair.
We'll raise money for charity. All right. So you should. So there's some PK jokes happening. Donate. There you go. I was wondering what you were saying there, Ed. Donate the hair to PK. That's true. Okay. So I'm watching Cam on Tuesday, and something like there's lots of things we've observed, the quick release, the demeanor. We've talked about a few of the things, but there's one thing that I noticed every time I've seen him play, at least in person, is that there's this is not an insult or a compliment. It's just something I've observed, and it's going to lead to something. So go with me on this journey here. The ball does have a tiny bit of like up and down waggle to it when he throws his football. However, there's one time that consistently when he loads up and tries to hit his mark, that it is real tight, and it's consistently the same throw most of the time. We saw it 2 weeks ago on Wednesday when he hit, I think it was Gunnar Helm on one of the first passes on a crossing route. He did it to Ridley and to Colton Dowell, I believe, on Tuesday. He also kind of hit Jaquan Jackson on a deep crossing route that is in a similar way. When he loads up to attack the middle of the field, the ball comes out faster. He's doing it more intentionally, and it's a tighter spiral, which is a little bit more catchable. I don't know if the waggle is going to be important or not in his career. It may mean absolutely nothing. It may mean something. I don't know. It may just be camp practice. I don't know. But when he loads up to throw, the spiral is tighter, and it's almost always over the middle of the field. He is very confident throwing the football over the middle of the field. It's when he is aggressive. It's when some of the throws he's made into double coverage and into triple coverage or a little high and outside have been to the outside the numbers and outside the hash. He is more comfortable in the middle of the field, I think. So first and foremost, before we get to what that means in my bold prediction and my theory here, do you get the same sense? Is it too early? Is it just me looking at tape from Miami and then looking at 2 weeks of practice and saying, I think that's where he's going to find his success earliest?
No, I think that's probably a fair conclusion. I think that he's talked about this, of how the middle of the field in the NFL is smaller than the middle of the field in college. So he had more opportunities to use the middle of the field, and he's going to have to adjust. And this is a thing that Callahan's talked about and Nick Holtz has talked about, of Cam is going to have to adjust to things that he's used to being there in college, not being there in the pros. And we can qualify this as many ways as we want, but the fundamental reality is a football field's still 53 1/3 yards wide. And he's going to be the kind of person who sees the middle of the field well. That's an asset that some quarterbacks have, some don't. I don't know if all of his best throws are necessarily over the middle. And you can talk about that Jaquan Jackson crossing route. That was outside the numbers by the time he let go. It was just a middle breaking route.
Right.
Like, I think that it has perhaps more to do with crossing patterns, no matter where they end up, than it does with generally reading the middle of the field. But I do think that he's very good at those things.
So, and Ed, this is where I want this conversation kind of to go, and you'll kind of see where I'm taking all of this, which is that that theory should lead to DK playing a key role, correct? Is that his go-to route? We'll get to that in a second, because I do think it leads to interesting sort of analysis of the receiving core, which, again, we'll get to in a second. So here's the outside the numbers throws are, while they are more difficult physically, they should be easier reads and easier decisions in theory.
Sure, because they're single coverage, yeah.
Right, generally speaking, and you've got more space generally to work with in terms of the defenders. I think it's a more difficult throw to attack the middle of the field, but it seems like he is more comfortable there. So it sounds like you're with me on that, because that's how he feels like when he loads up and is like aggressive. Again, 2 days of practice here, but it looks like he's way more comfortable there. And again, that's a more difficult place to attack in the NFL. So I think that's a positive sign to learn the outside throws, the outbreaking routes, the deep throws. I think to learn all of that stuff but to be really comfortable over the middle is a good sign. So here's the other thing I was watching. And we talked about this last week, where it was sort of like he was on target, on frame, but like maybe back shoulder on some throws. And the one that I've noticed through two days of practice is Calvin Ridley across the middle, generally speaking. Post routes, slants, digs, crosses, etc. He's like sort of hitting the back shoulder, right? It needs to be in front of him, leading him. It's here. So I don't think this is a big deal at all, because Calvin Ridley is different than most other receivers that Cam Ward has ever seen in his life. And so getting used to Calvin Ridley's speed, especially over the middle where he is very comfortable, I think is going to take a little bit of time. But here's my bold prediction. I think it is going to be a massive weapon for the Titans, because Cam Ward, to me, unlocks Calvin Ridley's abilities, meaning I can hit you in stride between a window, in man coverage, over the middle, the way no one else has been able to do for you in your career potentially. Am I crazy to think that that is going to be an explosive weapon that they are going to use? And this is back to Ed's question about DK. I think this means Ridley, because he's just a touch behind on Ridley. which means he's gonna get it accurate very quickly. Does this theory make any sense to you?
It does. It's going to have to obviously change the way they used Ridley compared to last year, which not necessarily a bad thing. You have a weapon, you have somebody who has not just the straight ahead speed, but the ability to burst and accelerate once the ball gets in his hands. And I think that is an asset you can use moving horizontally. I like the idea. It just becomes a question of, okay, so what are you doing to clear out the middle? Like, if Ridley is the one crossing the field, are you using a tight end to clear out the middle? Are you using a deeper dig route to clear out the middle? How do you make it so you're not exposing Calvin Ridley to a lot of contact? Because I'm not dismissing the idea, but you just don't want this guy getting crushed. He doesn't have the frame of, say, AJ Brown when he was running the middle of the field. Like, that dude was built a little bit more to withstand hits from linebackers and safeties. Ridley can take it, but if that's his primary objective, you're going to need somebody to get those people out of the way.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I don't know if it's primary objective necessarily, but I think the things we already think about with Ridley being weapons, his play outside, his ability to go take a deep shot, his ability to truly run a very crisp route tree on any direction. I think the key is that if you're pairing up a receiver's skills with what might be the quarterback's most comfortable early area of the field, and Eddie asked the question, are there concerns with him being behind receivers in practice? I would say no. I think the Ridley specific is getting used to a player that is unlike anybody he's ever played with before.
Sure.
But I think the thing I'm thinking through is Cam has the unique ability with anticipation and arm talent and quick release to maximize that part of Ridley's game. And it feels like right now over the middle is where he has found that success, Cam Ward. And Ridley, not only does he have the burst after catching the ball, but he's got the burst out of the break. That's the thing that makes him different, is when he plants and cuts, his first two steps are separation. And Cam Ward will have the unique ability, in my opinion, to capitalize on that and maximize that trait. And I think it could lead to a huge year for Ridley, not just outside, but with other things in his game. Maybe it's a better way to put it.
Yeah. And to kind of jump off of Eddie's question, I think there's an important distinction we need to draw between, is somebody behind on a throw because their recognition is slow, or is somebody behind on a throw because the accuracy is off? Right now, and again, we're basing it off of 2 practices, I think it has more to do with accuracy than recognition, which is a good thing at this stage in his career. If he is recognizing the plays and throwing to the right place, but he's just not putting it where it needs to be yet, that's timing, that's chemistry, that's him developing a rapport with these receivers, and you'd have to imagine that will improve once you get to training camp in the season and that sort of thing. This isn't he's behind because he's slow or missing his processing or any of that stuff. I know that we talk about processing and accuracy being the 2 most important things, and I'm saying choose which one you want more. But like, at this phase in his career, if he's ahead of schedule on processing, but on schedule with accuracy, that is really good.
Yeah.
So I think I've charted maybe 40 throws from Cam Ward in these 2 practices so far. And I would probably I've only seen 3 that were like, this was a bad decision or this was a misread. For the most part, the ball's going where it needs to go. He just needs to sharpen up the timing and the accuracy.
Is the the outbreaking route to Mason Kinsey in triple coverage one of the bad ones?
That was not smart. And again, we talked about last week.
It did hit him in the hands too, though, in the middle of triple coverage.
The same thing. It hit Jaquan in the hands. What we talked about last week, him throwing across his body while rolling right. Well, like, there are some things that you just win on arm talent, and if you hit the guy in the hands, who cares? But you should try and not throw across your body into the middle of the field in double coverage.
So Ed's having flashbacks to the Mariota discussion. Look, here's the thing. I only say all of this because I have watched Blaine Gabbert and Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis and Marcus Mariota on the same field at the same time of the year. And I'm just, first of all, they haven't, outside of AJ Brown, they haven't had a player with burst across the middle like Ridley.
That's what I was going to say about the Mariota thing of who was Marcus's Calvin Ridley.
Rashard Matthews, respect, but so what happens is you watch a team, you watch football, and I think this happens to fans as well. It probably happens to you. You just start getting a feeling about a thing, and I know that's very vague intentionally, but you just start thinking like, man, I don't know about the depth at offensive tackle or something as you're watching camp. It's not because you know everybody can just look at a depth chart, but you're standing out there and you're going, it's very clear that the ball comes out of his hand differently on these kinds of throws, whether it's comfort, whether it's a different thing that he's doing, and he completes a lot of them. That's the thing. Like, they have been the most successful throws in camp were these, Chig, Gunnar Helm, Jaquan Jackson, Calvin Ridley, Colton Dow. He's hit a bunch of different guys on similar-ish types of routes. Some are in-breaking, some are out-breaking, but they're generally, between the numbers. And he just seems more comfortable and confident in those spaces. And I know Ridley has all these other skills that I'm just sort of assuming that he will provide. But I think if you want, and I'll use some other receivers here. DK is a good example. I think he could run the same routes that Ridley does in a similar way with similar skills, just not as good. I think Alec Ayumanor, who I'm telling you guys is my guy still.
He's very polished.
He is going to run a lot of plays over the middle because he is good in traffic. They don't have, you talk about concerns about Ridley's body in between linebackers and safeties and stuff. He is going to, Ayumanor, if he is good enough to play, is going to be deployed on the outside in single coverage against smaller corners, and is going to be in the middle of the field because he doesn't mind working in traffic at all. They have some pieces to attack there, is my point. And I think Cam Ward's going to be very successful there. And I think Calvin Ridley has one of the best seasons of his career this year. I don't know why I'm thinking that. They're going to be trailing in games a lot. They're going to be throwing a lot. I think statistically he's going to have a really great season.
Shout out to Calvin Ridley for being the least projectable star receiver perhaps in the history of the National Football League. I wrote about this probably right after the draft, late April, early May. If you try to make a projection of what Calvin Ridley's statistics will look like year over year, you first have to acknowledge the fact that he is a 30-year-old receiver who has played the reps of a 25-year-old receiver. Then you have to acknowledge the fact that he has not played for the same quarterback in consecutive years since, I believe, 2019, 2020. This is the first time he's playing for the same head coach in consecutive years since 2021. And, most importantly, dude missed 2 years of his prime. But not because of injury. So, all of this stuff we say about Calvin Ridley, last year he was, 1,017, 1,018 yards, somewhere around there, almost identical to what he had his year in Jacksonville. If that's the baseline you're starting from of catching passes from Mason Rudolph and Will Levis behind a really rickety offensive line, he was a 1,000-yard receiver with, I think, 4 touchdowns. I really don't know what a fair projection is if this is a more consistent Titans offense, because I think 1,200, 1,300 should be the expectation. But
it's how he's getting paid.
It's how he's getting paid,
and has that talent.
How is the Titans offense going to look? Is he going to get double covered? Is he going to get bracketed? What can the Titans do to free him up if Lockett continues at his pace of regression as he has the last 2 or 3 years? If none of these rookie receivers step up, because realistically the expectation for day 3 receivers is that it's very hard for them to even get to 450 yards, let alone be a 700, 800 yard number 2 receiver. What is the attention going to be like on him? Can he overcome that? The Ridley conversation is fascinating.
If I told Titans fans that he had his second most yards of his career and the number 1 yards per catch in his career, I don't think people would know that. I don't think I knew that looking at his numbers. I think the year in Atlanta where he goes 90 catches, 145 targets, he had 120 targets last year. So 145 targets with Cam Ward should be the plan, 150 maybe. 90 catches, 1,374 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think, to Jordan's question where he says Ridley's floor is sort of 65, 100, and 1,000 and 5 touchdowns, but it's also his ceiling. I disagree. I think his ceiling is higher with Cam Ward. Otherwise, why did you draft him? Cam Ward should unlock Ridley's skills. I think 85 catches. I'm going to put a Titans tax on this, on his 90, on his season in 2020. 85 catches for 1,250 yards and 8 touchdowns, I think should be the expectation for Calvin Ridley, and I think he can do it.
And how many games was that for? Was that a 15 or 16 game year?
15 games. Yeah, he missed a game that season. Yeah. So I just think you can elevate your expectations because I think, and look, he was with Matt Ryan, right?
Yeah.
For a couple of those years, and Matt Ryan probably has the best processing and accuracy he's played with, I would guess.
Yeah.
And now there's a chance you got a guy with a better arm with just as good a processing and accuracy, who's young and hungry and busts his ass and is comfortable over the middle. All these things.
Okay, let's not immediately say Cam Ward has just as good of processing and accuracy as a late 30s Matt Ryan.
Supposedly.
Dude, Matt Ryan was
I do love Matt Ryan.
You're very good quarterback.
I do love Matt Ryan. Good point. Let's tone it down. I'm getting out of control here. It's June 5th. So anyway, there's things that you think through camp. You're like, man, I really like this Elijah Molden knows where he's supposed to be at all times. Yeah. Like he's a great tackler. He's very well coached. He knows where he's supposed to be at all times. And then he starting week 1 of his rookie season or played a lot. Like you can kind of get a sense about this stuff. And
yeah.
I'm getting spidey senses about Calvin Ridley and Cam Ward when they figure it out being very good. Does that mean that's just because they're trailing in games because the defense sucks and they can't run the football? I'm not suggesting it's the problem. It's solving all the problems here. I'm feeling, I get these feelings and I go, all right, it's time to say it on the show. Let's go. So that's my.
The only reason I'm tempering here is because I wrote a prediction post last year. My bold prediction was Calvin Ridley will by far and away be the Titans' best player. So I am trying.
Who was better?
By far and away, nobody was the Titans' best player last year. But I am trying to determine right now when Calvin Ridley looks good in June and July. Yeah. Is that a just Calvin Ridley looks really good in shorts player, or is there actually a difference this year?
Yeah. And Coach Will says it here. It's Braden being optimistic brings me comfort. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't feel this way very often. Most of the time, I'm just like skeptical about everything in life. And so when I feel a certain way, I do think for Titans fans that it's important to talk through those feelings and emotions, which is why I have you and PK in my life.
Yeah.
So, do appreciate you guys helping me out with my therapy. It's great. All right, I want to talk. I've got some position battles here. We're going to talk about in just a second. But I want to remind everybody, of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course, open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. It's not just, of course, the Blackhawk Farms American Wagyu Beef Brisket award winning. It is also handmade from scratch sides and cornbread. They got all kinds of other great pulled pork, sausage, chicken. They got great stuff. I love the dark meat half plate of chicken. It's fantastic. My body thanks me for doing that one. And then, of course, free parking. Can't overlook that. In Nashville, free parking is a very big asset. They also cater. So make sure if you've got an event, you want to have some barbecue. We had our events catered around the draft by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Big hit. Everybody loved it. Super easy to get some pork or brisket sliders going. Super easy to have some coleslaw and some green beans. It's great for an event. So if you got a small gathering, a birthday party, whatever, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue will take care of you. And of course, I've been told, Nick Suss, that they're the only barbecue joint in Nashville with a mechanical bull. Just want to point that out.
That is really fun to learn. But also, I was just hoping that you were going to stop at, I've been told they're the only barbecue joint in Nashville. Like, that fundamentally can't be true, but I love being told that.
It's like the I don't see color thing. Like, I don't see other barbecue joints. I just only see one. I only see Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. So make sure you go check them out, man. They're really great. It's great food. They're great local, all locally owned. No, like, out-of-state investors. No, franchise locations. This is just Pitmaster Bill cooking food for all of you because he loves it and because he's great at it. So go check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Sinker's Beverages, of course, also great to pair with that barbecue. If you're having an event at your house or you're catering an event for a birthday party or for a friend or for a Friday night, also a great idea to go to Sinker's Beverages, pick up a few cold, tall, cool, frosty ones, maybe a bottle of wine, bottle of bourbon, bring it to the party, makes the party even more fun. You young people aren't drinking enough. You need to have more, just a little bit more, not too much, but like you need to have a little bit more alcohol in your system because your life, you'll be happier and live longer. Do you guys not know this stuff?
Some people might know this about me. Some people might not. During pandemic times, I invented a game show to host over Zoom that was a big drinking game to get my friends drunk when we were all locked in our houses. Last weekend, I played it in person for the first time, and it went off great. Young people drinking. It was awesome.
Did you stay sober, or did you actually have some drinks?
No, if I'm going to host a drinking game, I do have to drink.
I feel like
it's part of the rules of the game.
Good.
So yeah, if you guys ever need a game show host in your life, I am rentable for parties and get-togethers.
So at the event that you're catering with Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and drinking with Sinkers, you could bring Nick Suss to the party to be a game show host. There you go.
Correct.
Dustin says, I'm going to go get an airbrushed Cam and Calvin t-shirt from Gatlinburg. Sounds like a good use of time and resources. There you go. Okay. Jordan says, and you can definitely get there from Nissan Stadium in no less than 13 minutes. Stop it, Jordan. You're wrong. You can get from City Hall to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue in less than 7 minutes, and I have multiple sources that have done it. If you're going on Gallatin Road, it will take you a few minutes longer. That's the argument here. That's the argument. Although I did get, you football show people don't know what Jordan's talking about here, but I did get from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue on Gallatin to our recording studio at 5 Points, where Jamie's office is, in 9 minutes and 22 seconds. And I have evidence of it. 9 minutes and 22 seconds. It's less than 10 minutes from downtown, Nick. That's the tagline, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. All right, enough of Shotgun Willie's. The receiving core. I'm looking at this, and I got a bunch of pushback on this when I posted it on Twitter. I don't know what a bunch of pushback is anymore on Twitter and how to define that, but people were like, "You're crazy." What my theory was is that I think 6 spots are already accounted for in the receiving core.
Okay.
You've got the 3 veterans in Ridley, and in Lockett and in Jefferson. Those are most assuredly on the team. You got the 2 rookies in DK and Ayu Manor, which I think it would be a huge upset if one of them does not make the team. It's possible, I suppose, but it would be a huge upset, in my opinion. And I don't know what they're going to do with Traylon Burks. I don't know. But that's 6 spots on the roster. I could see Traylon Burks cut. I could see him not making the team. They're not going to trade him because he doesn't have any value, so Titans fans don't ask. But I think 5 or 6 spots are accounted for. And they have like 7 other interesting receivers.
Yeah.
I think it is honestly, and I said this in the tweet when I posted video of all of them running ladder drills, of course, the most important video you'll ever see in your life. And I got people going like, what are you talking about? There's not spots all accounted for. I think 6 of them are accounted for if they're keeping Burks, and it's like 7 guys for 1 spot. Am I wrong on this?
I would say right now, I think 5 are accounted for. I am not putting Burks in the accounted for category. I wouldn't have had Jefferson in the accounted for category until last week.
Yeah, he is a lock.
When he looked like a guy who kind of needs to be on this team. I think where you and I might disagree is how many people are viable for that spot on the 53 versus how many are viable to make the practice squad. Because if we're saying who can make the 53, I think it's probably 2 or 3 guys fighting for that last spot. I'm not going to say never, but like the gaggle of Dowell, Kinsey, Jaquan Jackson, I don't necessarily think that there will be a path for them to start the year on the 53 so much as there will be a path to make the practice squad and get elevated as necessary. I think if we're talking about guys who are actually competing to make the 53, and again, I am really open to being wrong here because we have an entire training camp to watch and somebody can emerge. But we're talking about Restrepo simply because he's the fancy new toy and you like
he does something different than everybody else.
He plays well. He's a slot receiver. He's somebody that can do it.
He's thick enough to handle the beating of the position.
You talk about Bryce Oliver, who I don't necessarily think has the same luster that he might have 4 months ago.
I agree.
I think he's been surpassed in a lot of estimations, both just watching him on the field and also the players they drafted do things similar to what he can do. And then I think you have to mention James Prochet for the special teams value of simply, if nobody else makes it as the return man, he's kind of got to make the roster for that. Other than those guys, like I would love to see Colton Dowell compete for the 53, and I could be wrong that I don't think he will. but like he's going to have to prove that he is this regime's type of player. And in order to do that, he's going to have to be a gunner on special teams, and he's going to have to do a lot of things. And I think that he can do that. But when we're talking about, there's so many people fighting for this last spot, I think that a lot of them are fighting for the guy on the practice squad who gets elevated in week 4. But I don't necessarily know if we're talking August 28th when the 53-man roster comes out. These are the guys on it.
Is that the actual date, August 28th?
I don't know.
You know that off the top of your head?
No, I don't.
I feel exactly the same way as you do. I was just framing it for a more interesting conversation on the show. No, I agree. And honestly, here's the other thing. If Burks is on the team, I wouldn't be surprised if not one of these guys made the team. Like I think somebody will, but I agree. If you're going Jaquan Jackson, Prochet, Colton Dowell, Bryce Oliver, and Xavier Restrepo, that's kind of the top 5, I would guess. Am I missing somebody in the top 5 that would be competing for that 7th spot?
No, I think the only other player you're missing on the whole roster is Sheffield. And I like
Sheffield, that's right.
I like TJ Sheffield. Just
he's done,
watching him play, he's done pretty well. But yeah, he's definitely behind.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if none of those guys are on the active and they keep 6 if they keep Burks. If they don't keep Burks, then I think one of those guys makes the team. Maybe it's a special teams. I do think Dowell is interesting because he is the biggest, fastest, and does all the things. Like he can play outside, he can do special teams. I think if he can prove that he is healthy, I think he's got a real shot. Xavier Restrepo does different things. Prochet's been pretty good in 2 days.
Prochet's been pretty good.
Like I've been surprised. Now Jackson's also been pretty good, and that's a lie all the time too. So he's always looked good in practice, and then gets his body destroyed and drops the ball in games. So
yeah, the Dowell thing is pretty similar to the Oliver thing of, does Chimere DK just cancel him out?
Yeah.
Of, do they just say, okay, DK can do what Dowell can do? I don't know if it's a 1-for-1 comparison, but I do wonder if that role is being kind of squeezed out.
Kenneth says Burks cut and Jefferson lock is still a stretch. Jordan says, "Oh no, are we falling for the Van Jefferson summer bot?" It's that he just looks like a professional receiver. He's in the right place. He makes the plays. He just is. He runs really nice routes. Sometimes you get so enamored with the new fast young toy, and you just forget that like there's an element of being a professional that is really, really valuable to coaches and general managers.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a special player, but I think Van Jefferson is a professional player. And I think that gets him on the roster pretty easily.
I make the Family Guy mystery box reference entirely too much this time of year, but the Van Jefferson conversation is just exactly that. Like, let's say you're picking between Van Jefferson and Bryce Oliver. It's like you can pick Van Jefferson, who you know what he is, or you can pick Bryce Oliver, who could theoretically be anything, including Van Jefferson. Like, if we're reducing these guys to their production, and Van Jefferson's a guy who's going to get 300 to 500 yards as your number 3 or 4 target, that's probably what you're going to get from one of these young guys too.
Yeah.
Like, that's roughly what you'd expect from a day 3 rookie or a former UDFA in year 2, or from James Prochet as a special teamer who can fill in sometimes. Like, it's not like, you pick Van Jefferson and you're condemned to 350 yards, but if you sign Restrepo, he's expected to go for 900. If you're signing somebody to be your number 4 or 5 target, they're going to produce like a number 4 or 5 target.
Yeah.
That's just how this is going to work.
Eddie says getting veterans receivers does seem to be their favorite thing. Tyler Boyd was different. I think that's a unique situation, but you're right. They've been searching and grabbing these guys for a long time. This one's different. I just think expectations are very low. Look at the price point. What was he, like $1 million, $2 million bucks, like less than that. He's a very small contract. So I just think he's clear in two watching him in his career, knowing what he is, and then seeing him on the field against the other guys, it is very clear that he's ahead of those guys on the depth chart, in my opinion. That's my opinion. But again, we're not supposed to say all that stuff, whatever. Coach Will says, how many tight ends are we going to keep this? Do you have any theory on that real fast before we get to linebacker?
3. I think they're not going to go as heavy as last year because they realized it didn't help out on special teams as much as they'd hoped.
I tend to agree with that. Helm, Chig, and Wiley. There you go. So, all right. I want to know who wrote the headline. How Tennessee Titans can end excruciating trend at most interesting position battle. Did you write that?
Probably.
Okay.
It might have been tweaked. It might have been tweaked a little bit, but I probably wrote the bones of it. You want to just jump straight into a game that people in the comments can play? If you haven't read the article yet, I have compiled a list since the losing streak started in November of 2022. Just give a guess. How many linebackers have the Titans signed, waiver claimed, promoted from practice squad, drafted, traded for? How many linebackers have been added to the 53 since that time?
So I've got it in front of me, and I still can't tell you how many. I'm literally looking at the list, and I cannot tell you how many it is. That's how many it is.
It's 26. And so if you guys haven't read the article in the comments, just start throwing out names, man. If you think you can Sporkle name all 26 linebackers.
Sporkle reference. Nice.
I've played more. If you guys can find my Sporkle account, you would be devastated to see how many quizzes I've played in my life.
I am geography every time. All I do is geography.
Again, I'm pulling up
countries, capitals, cities, African countries, European cities, most population, biggest populous areas, DMAs. At one point I think I could name like all 92 Asian countries or something like that. Give me all geography.
14,765 is how many Sporkle quizzes Sporkle tells me I've played in my life. 14,765. I've had the same active account since 2010.
Well, I was going to say, I started this when I still worked at the Athlon Sports office full time, which was before I had a child. She is now 8.5.
During pandemic times, I decided I was going to memorize the globe, to your point. So there was a point in my life where I could name every single country on Earth.
Like all 198 or whatever?
All 197, yeah.
and spell it correctly.
Yes, yeah. But so to the point of this conversation, 26 inside linebackers. You guys have had time to think on it. I'll just read them off. Jack Gibbons, Zach Cunningham, Andre Smith, Luke Givard, Aziz Al-Shaair, Ben Neiman, Otis Reese, Chance Campbell, Otis Reese again, Joe Jones, Chance Campbell again, Joe Jones again, Otis Reese again, Jojo Doman twice, Garrett Wallow, Jojo Doman again, Tay Crowder, Kenneth Murray, Jack Gibbons again, Cedric Gray, James Williams, Michael Jones, Ernest Jones, Gifford 3 more times, Jerome Baker, Curtis Bolton, Raekwon McMillan, David Long if he'd passed a physical, McMillan again, Cody Barton, Curtis Jacobs, David Kabenda, Amari Burney, and Fernie Orji. That takes us
Raekwon McMillan counts?
He played in 2 games last year.
Okay.
The one who shouldn't count is David Long, given the fact that he didn't pass his physical. But that's a lot of linebackers they have tried for the conversation to still be. I don't know if they have linebackers.
I do think they feel like they found a top 3 or 4. Am I wrong to say that?
I would agree. I don't know exactly how much depth chart we can reveal right now, so sorry about that. I feel pretty comfortable in saying who I think is on the bottom, and I feel pretty comfortable talking about who I think is in that top cohort.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's 2 tiers. And Cody Barton.
I would say there's 4 tiers. If we're going quartiles, there's Cody Barton.
Quartiles.
There's the guys competing for the job. There's the guys competing for special teams roles. And then there's a guy who I just don't think looks very good right now.
Fair.
One of the waiver wire pickups. I'll just let you guys.
I think if you look at contract, draft status, reps last year, I think you can put the list together pretty easily. I think it's very self-explanatory and very logical. It doesn't mean it's going to be good, but I think it's very logical based on common sense stuff. So you guys do with that information what you will. All right, you want to talk college football?
Sure.
Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. There we go. All right, so there are 3 models now being presented. One of them is not really a real model because it's Lane Kiffin's model. One of them is being presented by the Big Ten, which I'm going to call the pay for playoff model, which is basically buying a participation trophy for 4 slots for your conference. And then there's one that I think we'll get to the compromise. So the first model is this 4-4-2-2-1-1-1-1-1-3 thing. It's ridiculous. It's very dumb and very stupid. Where the Big Ten gets 4 automatic bids, the SEC gets 4 automatic bids, the Big 12 gets 2, the ACC gets 2, Notre Dame gets an automatic bid if they're above a certain number, and then there's like 3 at-larges. All of this is in a 16-team playoff because it's going to expand to 16 because everyone can make more money that way. They do not make any more money if they expand to 14. It's language about the contract and television. They do not make more money if it's 12. They're going to go to 16. The question is, how do they go to 16? So the first model is this automatic qualifier thing, which is being pushed exclusively by the Big Ten. There's been lots of pushback, Nick, by all the conferences about this model and the fans. So this is the one that is the least popular right now. It has a lot of far-reaching implications. It changes the value of a championship game. It could change play-ins. A Saturday could be a play-in Saturday at the end of the year, where you could have like a mini tournament at the end of each conference season to play in to win those spots. It changes the value of non-conference games. It changes all kinds of things. Automatic qualifiers changes everything. So I want to get your thoughts first on that format. What you like, what you don't like, etc.
Stinky.
That's it.
It's bad. It's a bad idea.
Wordsmith.
I've said this on the show before. I've said this to Braden before. I do not like the ability of people in power to legislate themselves into power for longer periods of time. I think that's all that's happening here. The history of college football does not support the idea that the Big Ten and SEC should be in power for long sustained periods of time. There were long sustained periods of time where the Big Ten and SEC were good. There were long sustained periods of time where the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or the ACC or independents or any other conferences had the power balance. You don't have to go that far back. You can look back to 2010 or 2011 when the Pac-12 network started, and the Pac-12 was the most profitable conference in college athletics. It is weird that was so recently, or the not most profitable, highest valued, most valuable conference in college athletics. It is strange that was 14 years ago, and now that conference doesn't exist. And so the grubby little fingers of people in power deciding, oh, I can legislate myself into power forever. I don't like that. So if it's specifically the Big Ten and SEC saying we're going to get 4 forever, I don't like that, because you're not allowing the power dynamics to shift. If you're saying there are 2 conferences every year that get 4 automatic, and we can decide based off of which conferences are most powerful right now, that's okay to me a little bit. It's not good, but I would tolerate that.
I don't think the Big 12 or the ACC will ever be more powerful than the Big 10 or the SEC moving forward, because they've rigged it, but not through this method, but through acquiring teams that make them the biggest and most powerful and most profitable conferences. The Big 12 might be more interesting on a Saturday, week in, week out basis, more dramatic, more balanced. Lots of words you can use. They will never. The shift in this most recent round of realignment has permanently changed the sport. I think we're going to continue to trend that direction. This is another part of that conversation. So let me rattle off a few non-conference games in college football this year to get excited about. Number 1, Texas versus defending champ Ohio State. That's a game in the non-conference. LSU and Clemson, both top 10 teams, both with eyes on the playoff. Both have Death Valley at their stadium. They're going to play in Clemson. Oklahoma is going to host Michigan. Really great non-conference game. Do those games still have the same value if 4 teams automatically get in from the Big Ten and the SEC? Probably not. There's a positive, which is if you're the Big 12 or the ACC, you may not always have 2 teams that are worthy of getting in. Last year, you did not in the Big 12, for example. You barely did in the ACC. So in theory, the Big 12 and the ACC are kind of voting to some degree against their own best interest, because they don't like this model either. I do like the idea of the play-in Saturday being like 3 in the SEC versus 6 in the SEC and 4 versus 5, and the 2 winners go to the playoff. That would be tremendous drama and wait for it, large money-making asset for the SEC to sell to like Netflix or Amazon. So there's a positive. It also means, in my opinion, if they go to the automatic qualifiers, they will expand to 9 conference games, which I want, because I want to see more good football games during the regular season. So they might go to 9 anyway, but this model all but guarantees a 9 conference game. So there's 2 positives, and the rest are largely negative from both of us. I agree. Buying your playoff spots is the softest, most un-American thing I can think of in sports. It's pathetic, Big Ten. Do better. Then there's the compromise model. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let's go to the Lane Kiffin model. We'll present either end of the spectrum, and then we'll come to the compromise. Lane Kiffin's model, which I don't think is being considered, but is fun to talk about, is just 1 through 16 are ranked by the committee with all the different metrics and human elements and computers involved, and you just put them into a tournament. And there is no automatic qualifiers for any conference champion. You put 16 teams in, 1 through 16, and you play them off like a college basketball bracket. Let me give you some matchups, Nick. You want some matchups from last year?
Oh, sure.
Number 16 Clemson versus number 1 Oregon. Hell yes. In Outson Stadium? Yes. Number 9 Boise State versus number 8 Indiana. Absolutely. Sign me up.
I probably would have skipped that one.
That's a great game.
It's a great game. I probably would have done something else.
Number 12, Arizona. I'm doing all of them. Number 12, Arizona State at number 5, Notre Dame. Arizona State almost beat Texas. They could have absolutely gone into South Bend and almost beaten Notre Dame. Great game. How about this one? Number 13, Miami at number 4, Penn State. Yes, please. Yes, please. Mario Cristobal versus James Franklin. Yes, please. Number 11, Alabama versus number 6, Ohio State in the Horseshoe. Sound good to you?
It does.
Number 14, Ole Miss versus number 3, Texas. Interested?
A lot of drinking would be involved.
Ooh, a lot of talent on that field. Number 10, SMU at number 7, Tennessee. Sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, good game.
Just man of many words today. Number 15, South Carolina, trending way up last year at the end of the year, of course, against number 2, Georgia. That would just be, for example, last year's matchups in this model. This is my favorite model because it has the most meritocratic. Give me the word, wordsmith. What's the word I'm looking for?
Good.
It is the most about competitive balance and earning your way into the field. According to those rankings, you would have gotten a G5 and a Big 12 and an ACC team into the tournament. I think those games are spectacular. And while I don't love 16 teams, I like the buys. I like there being some things to play for inside of the tournament, different tiers. That's pretty awesome right there.
And Lane makes a good point. If we're trying to build a tournament, why not put the best teams in that tournament? We can get to the sus model afterwards because I have 2 pitches I've had for years. But of the 3 being bandied about, that is the one I'm most favorable towards.
Okay. I think that's my favorite as well. Then there's the model that's probably going to pass, which is the 5-11 model, which is 5 automatic qualifiers, 5 top-rated conference champions, which is going to be largely your top 4 power conferences, plus the highest-rated G5 champion, and then 11 at-large models. The SEC is okay with this model. The Big 12 and the ACC are okay with this model. They want this model because, frankly, they can try to get like 12 spots at most in the tournament, which is unlikely. But it is this is the compromise, which is the college basketball model. We'll give you a little geographic hat tip. We'll give you a little access for one team that wins your championship, creates a little value for your conference champion. And then we have the best 11 teams making the tournament. That's the one that I think will probably become the model, which right now the sport does not have a playoff structure after 2025.
Yeah, I think that probably passes. I think that if that happens, and they're throwing out the top 5 seeds are guaranteed to conference champions.
That's already been eliminated. Okay. It's going to be straight seeding. So instead of, if Boise State's a champion at number 9 and jumps to 3, like that's gone. It's just you get in. It's the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
68 teams get in based on at-large and automatic qualifiers, and they are ranked 1 through 68.
Yeah, I think that is going to be fun to watch. Is it going to be good for the sport? I do not think so long term. But for the viewer, I'm not going to complain about it. It's a lot of good football.
Is it
because those matchups you just laid out, those 1 through 16 automatic at-larges, if you gave with the 5-11 model, it would have been identical except for you replace like Clemson in for whoever the 16 was.
No, Clemson was the 16.
Okay. So
and SMU was the 10. So actually it would have been identical. Yeah.
It would have been identical.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that the difference between 16 at-larges and the 5-11 is going to be that big of a deal, assuming we've gotten rid of ranked seeding for conference champions. And since that's been changed, realistically, a 5-11 will most years yield the top 16 into the conference, into the playoff.
I mean, I know the G5 is probably outside of the top 16 most years. Every now and then they have it. Cincinnati was, Boise State was. I think Tulane might have been a couple years ago, top 15 or whatever. And honestly, Clemson as the ACC champ at 16 was only 1 slot away from kicking a team out if they were 17, for example. Is that the one of the 3 that I just mentioned? Is that the one that is best for the sport?
I don't necessarily think that there is any way for a 16-team playoff to be best for the sport, because what you're doing essentially is eliminating regular season intrigue in a way that 12 didn't, and in a way that 4 certainly didn't.
Why does 12 and 16 eliminate regular season intrigue?
Because I think that 12, I think, created this impetus to watch an 8 versus 9 game. Like, whereas if the number 8 team in the country and the number 10 team in the country were playing under 4, neither of them are going to make the playoff. If they were playing under 12, this is for a playoff spot. If they're playing under 16, it kind of feels like they're both going to make it anyway. It does take away that
bunch of other games, though, that become more interesting because there's more value added.
Maybe, but I do think that
all of a sudden Iowa, Wisconsin becomes a really important football game because they're both, 8-3.
I have a long running joke about college football that I think there are 2 types of college football seasons. Ones where every team is bad and ones where no teams are good. Those are essentially the 2 types of college football season. Most years, nobody's any good. So most years, if a team is ranked 15th and another team is ranked 18th and they're playing each other, those are 2 not good teams. They just happen to be ranked 15th and 18th because nobody's good. And I'm not going to fall for that. I am not going to be bamboozled into saying, oh, this Iowa-Wisconsin game means more. Sorry, QC, that's Braden's example. I'm taking it off.
I love Iowa-Wisconsin games.
I'm not going to be tricked into being like, oh, this is a good, important game.
Why?
No, it's an important game. That doesn't make it a good game.
Now you are taking shots at Iowa's offense.
No, I'm specifically taking shots at, if you are the 15th best team in college football, you're probably not very good.
I disagree. I think you may not be great. You may not be good enough to win a national championship.
But why are we letting these teams win national championships then? Why are we?
They won't.
Why even let them compete?
It is an illusion of an opportunity to compete for a championship because this is back to the expansion conversation in the first place, which is you are creating more interest for more fan bases and more regions of the country for longer inside of the season, and that is healthier for the sport. For Iowa State and Colorado that game to be an extremely meaningful game, despite the fact that they're both 7-2 or 8-3, all of a sudden, it's extremely meaningful to those communities. Like, you don't think Indiana fan celebrates last year in a way that they have never celebrated before? They do, and they will remember that team forever.
Brother, I work in sports media. I know how Indiana fans feel.
Fair. I'm just saying, like, the expectation at Alabama is different than the expectation at Missouri and Iowa, which is different at the expectation at Troy. And so if Troy gets into the playoff, it doesn't matter if they win or lose. It's a historic season. If Iowa or Colorado or this middle tier wins a game in the playoff, it's a historic season. But SMU, historic season.
I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but we are losing the plot on why we have championships, right? Like, if we're doing this to keep more fan bases engaged later in the season, that's not why we have playoffs. There are 2 reasons we have playoffs: a cynical reason and a correct reason. The cynical reason is to make a ton of money. Yeah. And the correct reason is because let's pick a random college football year that neither you nor I know anything about.
You got to go way back.
That's what I was going to say. Let's say 1966. Off the top of my head, I don't know anything about 1966.
Michigan State had a really great team based on recruiting Texas and getting black players to the north. So
you
got to go further back, big guy.
No, but my point here is, you know that because you've looked up who was crowned champion. Like, you didn't look at which fan bases were engaged in 1966. You looked at who had the best record, who was the team crowned champion. That's how we remember sports historically. We remember sports based on the history. If you talk about the 2024 NFL season, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, but the Philadelphia Eagles will be the focus of that. Never mind the fact that the Detroit Lions were the number 1 seed. Never mind the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs had a better record. The Eagles were the best team because they won the championship. We have championships to remember history.
You've missed
and
the entire point.
If we're allowing teams that shouldn't win a championship to win a championship, we are misrepresenting history. And that annoys me.
Okay. then don't be annoyed, because two answers to that. Number one, that college football has never, ever, the purpose of college football was never, ever to remember just the champion. It's not the NFL. It's not Major League Baseball. It's not the NHL Stanley Cup final. It's not. It is about all the other things that make college football special. And I know you know
why
that.
did we start a playoff in 2014?
Because
why
there's
did we
two
crown a
types of
BCS
fans.
champion in 1998?
Because
we
there's
did
two
it
types of fans.
because every fan wanted conclusiveness.
No,
because
we
we
did it for
spent 100 years not crowning a champion, and schools would fight over, no, I'm the best, no, I'm the best. So we agreed to crown a best.
No,
that's what this is for.
No, you're missing the point. Only a certain class cares about that. Only a certain class of program and fan, and those are still the same class, exact same group of teams that have the chance to win a 16-team playoff. The other ones care about the memory and the nostalgia, and you can call it naive, but Iowa State is not playing football to win national championships. Iowa State is playing football because it's fun and awesome, and the stadium is good, and the rivalries are fun, and if they get to the playoff, because Matt Campbell, the greatest coach in their history or whatever, takes them to the playoff twice, that they're not watching to win a national championship. They're watching because they love, Seneca Wallace.
Sure, but you are making the assumption that this is about hardcore fans, and it's not. This is about casuals. This is about people. The playoff is about casuals. We did this because casual fans want to see a team be the best. No casual fan is in here because, I just love Dan Lefevre. And if Dan Lefevre got to play in the playoff, that would have been... Nobody's doing that. People want to see the best players. People want to see the best teams. And people want to say, man, that was the best game. Do you know what the highest rated television event in college football history is? Do you know what the highest rated college football game of all time is, television-wise?
Television-wise? I should.
It's USC Texas in 2005.
Yeah.
We have not topped that in 20 years. You want to know why? Because that was the best matchup ever. Because those were the two best teams ever.
Maybe.
There has not been, I think the last time that a college football game broke into the top 10 most watched college football games of all time was in 2014 in the first college football playoff. I believe Oregon versus Ohio State, that first championship.
National championship?
That first national championship is the only in either the top 10 or the top 20 most watched college football games ever from the modern era. Everything else is 2009, like 1990 to 2009.
Like 36 million viewers, something like that.
Somewhere around there. And so if you're looking at that as evidence of what's going to make people watch, what's going to make the networks money, what's going to get the attention there, people were interested one time in the modern era to the same degree they were before that. And we know linearity of television, and we can talk about media dynamics, and we can do all of this. But the one time in the modern era that television audience has been as fixated on college football as it was in the 90s, as it was in the early aughts, was the first time we crowned a champion. You can't sit here and say it's not about crowning a champion. You can't say it's about engaging the audience in Boulder longer into the year. Cool. I'm glad for the audience in Boulder, but the playoff is for a national audience.
You are talking about the reasons that television and business decisions, bean counters, are making these decisions. The motivation, and this is I'm working on a project about beer, and when Anheuser-Busch and Yazoo, both of which you can get at Sinkers Beverages, by the way, when you put those two together, they have competing interests at all times, except for when they need a beer law changed and they're at the state capitol lobbying to get the beer law changed. Strange bedfellows sometimes when you're trying to make changes. And the casual fan is not ever who I've cared about. That's who TV cares about. That's who business people care about. That's who advertisers and corporate sponsors care about. And that is what's driving all of the decisions, to your cynical point earlier. But to the fan of college football, there are two different types of fans of college football. There is the fan of the team that wins national championships, and there's the fan of the team that does not. And those are two different fans. And they both
aren't
benefit.
College football fans. Those are fans of colleges.
Yeah,
that is a different premise.
Sure.
Being a fan of Kansas State University does not make you a college football fan. And if your interest is in Kansas State's season mattering longer, then your interest is not in college football. Your interest is in Kansas State football. If your interest is in college football, you are interested in the broad spectrum of the game. And the broad spectrum of the game, it's worse when a 15 seed is competing for a national championship. Like,
But
that's the point here.
What's interesting
We're giving them the opportunity. What's the point of giving them the opportunity? That's always what I'm going to come down
to. Because more football is good.
It's not, though. I was so bored watching SMU Penn State. That was not fun.
I think some of the model and this past season, there are going to be problems. The 14 playoff had that problem as well. But again, looking at what I think it's going to do, and I think you have to consider that talent is more dispersed and spread out, and that teams ranked, and I'm going to use this past year as an example. Alabama at 11, South Carolina at 15, Ole Miss at 14, Miami at 13, Clemson at 16. While in the past, mistakes in the regular season would have ended your season, it doesn't mean that those teams are not good enough to compete. And last year, I would argue all of those teams were good enough to compete. Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama, all missed the playoff last year. All would have been very worthy seeds between 12 and 16 that could have won a game. Are any of them good enough to win the national championship? Do we get the purist at the top of the sport saying, I want the best team to win the national championship? No. I think Alabama, Ohio State play in that 6-11 matchup, and I think Ohio State still probably wins the national championship. They were the best team. 2019 LSU, 05 Texas, whatever. The best teams are still going to win the national championship, and the Blue Bloods with all the players are still going to be the final 2 or final 4. But we can also provide value to other fans who just love Kansas State and maybe pay attention to a little bit of Big 12 ball or whatever. They are now going to start watching more games, and more of the sport it benefits because more people are watching more teams because the other teams now affect their team more so than ever before. And it's just making the Missouri-Kansas game more valuable by a little bit. Does it reduce the value of the Texas-Georgia-Ohio SEC championship game? Sure. But you know why the SEC championship game exists? To make money. And I don't care. I don't care that the SEC championship game has less value. I don't care. I like the fact that Missouri and Auburn is going to be an important football game this year, potentially.
Yeah,
right? Like I like that.
Mathematically, it will happen someday that college football will have its 1983 NC State basketball team. Mathematically, it will happen that an 11 seed or a 10 seed or something like that is going to win a national championship. And it is going to be lauded as a good thing. And it is going to be lauded as great news for the sport that a Cinderella story happened. And that is when I will be on the front line saying, this is dumb. Why did we just let a 4-loss team win a national championship?
I think you're it will happen. It will be a blue blood that does it, though. It will not be a Cinderella. Boise State's never going to have the talent to win 4 games.
But we're going to call it a Cinderella.
No, we won't.
If Ole Miss won a championship last year as an 11 seed, we would have, or a 13, whatever they were, we would have called that a Cinderella.
Right.
We absolutely would have labeled that as a Cinderella. In the same way that NC State winning a championship came from they came from the ACC.
I think Ole Miss, didn't Villanova win it as the lowest rated seed ever in like 86 as like an 8 seed or something like that?
Yeah.
Like Butler almost winning a championship, right? Again, almost. None of these teams Ole Miss is fascinating because they were more talented than any Cinderella could or mid-major could ever call themselves. But they also have never competed for a national championship. They're not a blue blood. So they're kind of an interesting case study in changing caste system inside of the college football world. But again, you kind of prove my point because they weren't even good enough to get to 10-2. They lost to Kentucky, which makes the Kentucky game an extraordinarily important game that never would have been important before. So you kind of made my point there, which is like now Ole Miss's games, all of them are extremely interesting and important. And they've had the ability to elevate themselves from middle of the pack to competitor and still will probably never win 4 games in the playoff unless they have enough players. You have to have elite talent to win 4 games in a playoff. It's going to make it harder to win the national championship, not easier.
No, it's making it easier because before you had a 0% chance, before you were not in the playoff and could not compete for it. And now you are in the playoff and competing for it. That is fundamentally the definition of easier because it is a possibility. It's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen frequently. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but there will come a time where a 10 seed or an 11 seed or a 13 seed wins a national championship. And we're going to have to live in a world where the history books will say the best team in college football was some 9-3 team from the Big Ten that got hot. I have a book right over here, right over my shoulder, about the 64th best team in college baseball winning a World Series. I was there.
Fresno State.
Ole Miss. I was there covering it. I was, after every single game, turning to the people with me in the press box and saying, "These goobers, are going to win a championship."
And
they did.
It's going to happen. Factually wrong about the probabilities here. Oregon's best chance to win a national championship already happened. Here, let's use Oregon as a perfect example here. One of the top 2 teams in the nation in 2010. All they needed to be was have a great season, and they got into the national championship game. All they had to do was win one game. All they had to do was stop Michael Dyer, get his knee on the ground. That one play, if they could just get Michael Dyer's knee on the ground, they might have won that national championship game. The next time they made it to the national championship game, they had to win 2. They had to beat Jameis Winston in Florida State, and then they had to beat Ohio State. Didn't happen. Last year, number 1 seed in the nation. They get into the playoff. They've got to win 3 games. They get bounced in the first round by a team that had more players and had better players and was going to win and eventually won the national title. It is more difficult. The regular seasons are the same. You have to win more games.
You can criticize me for a lot of things, but do not say my factual probabilities are inaccurate. I am 100% correct in the fact that a 10 seed could not win a national championship in the BCS. A 10 seed could not win a national championship in the 4-team playoff.
2 different arguments.
No, that is the whole argument, is that we're giving an opportunity for a 10 seed to win a championship. Probability is that going to happen? Very low. But it is, if you do the 16-team playoff forever, if you do the 16-team playoff for 20 years, it is mathematically likely that a team from outside the top 4 seeds is going to win a national championship. And you want to know how I know that? Because it's already happened. A team from outside the top 4 has already won a championship. Ohio State was the number 8 seed? The 7 seed?
Can we not, is it not easy to say it is obviously easier to get into the playoff, but obviously more difficult to win it? Is that not, like, that's all we're saying here.
But the difficulty of winning it is immaterial when you now have a chance to win it.
You have a chance when week 1 starts. Everybody has a chance when week 1 starts.
But then we decide who makes the playoff based on who deserves to compete for a championship.
Indiana had a better chance in the BCS era of winning a national title than it did last year.
Okay.
That if that season happens during the BCS era, it's this close to getting into one game, and a 1-game situation. You got a 1-game opportunity to win a national title.
Cool.
See Ohio State over Miami. See Texas over USC. See any upset. Ohio State losing to Florida.
But the second best team winning in an upset, to me, is still a more valid champion than the 9th best team winning in an upset.
No argument.
Why are we giving the 9th? So I'm arguing. I'm not saying you're arguing. I'm saying I'm arguing. Why are we giving the 9th best team a chance? What is the point of this? Why do we want the 9th best team to have a chance?
So again, it is about, to your very first point, it's not about money for me because I'm not making any money here, but it is about the health of the sport. The sport is better, more productive, and healthier for all fans, casual or diehard, if the entire country is paying attention for longer, and more games mean more to more people. That's it. And and if you look at the percentages and ratios of sports leagues and the teams that get into playoffs, it is the least accessible playoff in the history of sports. 4 out of 130 is an extraordinary ratio that is out of whack with every other sport in the history of our sports. 68 into 350 is more palatable. 14 into 32 in the NFL. Like, it's 4 out of 130 is not representative of the sport. It's just not.
But it's representative of the teams that we're trying to determine who are the best. Like, every year we had 4 in. We could have argued, only 3 of these teams really should be here.
At first, I agree with you. And the ratings went down, and people stopped. It was bad for the sport to have access be so limited. I was with you. I had your view of this the entire time. This was the entire expansion debate for like 8 years. I had your view of it. I valued excellence over access. I always did. And now I've come around on what's better for the product. What makes me more entertaining and more enjoyable is to see more meaningful football games with more teams across a regular season. That is still my favorite. And if Ohio State loses twice and gets a pass and gets into the playoff and wins a championship, I'm willing to put up with that, because they were the best team and they get to go prove it on the field, unlike we've ever had a chance to do before in the past. So,
and to make the bedrock of my argument, we can sit here and say Ohio State was the best team. because we watched the games and we were here and we are first person references to history. Most people are not that.
Yeah,
Most people are going to look at the Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning debate and say Tom Brady was the best quarterback of all time, because they are looking at what they've been told and they're looking at championships and they're looking at stat sheets. And anyone who was there and anyone who remembers watching the two play side by side can say, well, actually, it looked like this when you were watching them. But history remembers what history wants to remember. And so now the way that Ohio State will be remembered is much different than the way Ohio State should be remembered.
How should they be remembered? As the best team in the country?
They should be remembered as the most talented team that got a chance that no other most talented team has ever gotten. They should be remembered as a team that, under every other model in the history of college athletics, would not have had a shot to play for a championship and should not have had a shot to play for a championship because they did not earn the shot to have a championship. And then we changed the rules and definitions of what earned a shot to play for a championship is. We have totally upended 156 years of precedent of what earning your way to a championship looks like. And that's fine. We changed what earning your way to a Super Bowl looks like. We changed what earning your way to a World Series looks like. There used to be 2 teams that win a pennant and those teams play for the World Series. There used to be 4 NFL teams that make the playoffs. There are 14. I understand that money matrices are going to change this, but that doesn't change the fact that the 2007 New York Giants were a 10-6 team and should not be remembered as the best team in the NFL. That doesn't change the fact that the 2010 San Francisco Giants, I'm not just picking on teams named Giants, but that doesn't change the fact that if you make the playoffs as a wild card, you can still win it. But it just bothers me that the best teams don't get rewarded as being remembered as the best team.
You are completely ignoring the context of easier scheduling. You're completely ignoring it and suggesting that an 11-1 or 12-0 team is automatically better than a 10-2 team because they may or may not have played a very easy schedule or not. You're completely ignoring that, and the college football will never fix that.
But I'm not completely ignoring that because
your assumption. No, hang on. Ohio State was the best team in the preseason. They were number 1. At the end of the season, they were number 1. They lost to a rival, and in past formats, you're right. They wouldn't have had a chance to avenge that in some form or fashion. It doesn't mean they weren't the best team. I agree with you. The Giants at 10-6 were not the best team in the regular season. You could argue that Ohio State still was. Even at 10-2, they still were arguably the best team in college football. It's why we all picked them to win the national championship. What you are ignoring is that when a team goes 12-0, it is not because they are the best all the time. If you go 12-0, sometimes it's a product of your schedule. See Indiana and SMU. It is not because you are the best, and that is also a problem or an error that some of us view as being fixed by this. So it's not.
You know what else fixed that? You know what else fixed that? The BCS. The BCS was really good about that. I'm not saying the BCS was a perfect system, but we had a system from 1998 through 2013 that more often than not, put 2 of the 3 best teams in the championship at minimum, often the 2 best. Let's not pretend like there's no way to standardize that 12-0 Boise State was in all these championships. No, we were ignoring them because they played a worse schedule because the computers did a good job of that.
I have been asking that question for years. Why are we capable of eliminating G5 teams and not capable of doing the same nuanced argument about an ACC schedule versus a Big Ten schedule versus an SEC schedule? I've been saying that for years. I don't know why it's so easy for us to do with Tulane going undefeated and Western Michigan going undefeated and UCF going undefeated, and it's impossible for us to do the same thing if it's a 12, no offense QC, a 12-0 Iowa team that played a really easy schedule and gets to a Big Ten championship game and loses to Michigan State on the final drive of the game. Not to bring up a delicate subject, but I don't know why that's difficult. I don't know why that's difficult to look at and to parse out. I've never understood it. But would a perfect system be 6 or 8 or 10 for me? Probably. Do I want to see it go to 16? No. But here we are, and more teams are involved, and more teams are healthy because of it. And hopefully it means that when the breakaway happens, it's like 60 teams and not 30.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping. So
my perfect system would be a different number every year. You have a committee, you use the human element, you pick how many teams actually belong every year. It's mathematically
a 2-team playoff.
Yeah, that is my perfect system, and it can't happen because of TV contracts. But if a committee got together and they're like, there are 5 teams that deserve it, that would be the Suss model.
Yeah, Suss cuts his hair and he gets all spicy. QC says the 2015 Big Ten championship game never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. That's right. 22 play drive. Let's go watch it on YouTube. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Very spirited here at the end. I do love discussing college football structure with you because I know I'm going to get passion and I know I'm going to get thoughtfulness and someone who loves the sport and loves the game. So just because you're wrong doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. So if I would agree with you, and then we'd both be wrong. So there we go. No, I'm kidding. Great stuff, Nick, as usual. Always a pleasure. Tennessean.com. Go check it out. Sorry for going long. But you know what? Sometimes the content rules. So there you go. For Nick, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Shotgun Willie's, Sinkers Beverages. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you on Monday.